a panel from Central America and the Caribbean. And we're very fortunate because we have an even split. So we're going to cover the entire middle section of our hemisphere. So we have two people from the Caribbean. We have Kevin Ramnarain from who was a minister of energy in Trinidad and Tobago. And also we have Rafael Velasco, who is the superintendent of electricity of the Dominican Republic. So we have the Caribbean represented. And from Central America, we have my very good friend, Sylvia Alvarado. She's the president at the Energy Intelligence Consulting. And we also have Senor Jose Salvador Handal, who was here just a second ago, and I think his camera is turned off, so if he can turn on. And Salvador is the executive secretary of the National Energy Commission of El Salvador. And we were talking about energy transition, the role of hydrocarbons in energy transition, and the path to green recovery. So we want to start now on a macro level. Sylvia, you are in Guatemala, but you also work throughout the Central American region. Could you tell us what is the contribution of Central America in the green recovery and in the energy transition?
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Thanks to the Institute of the Americas, to you and Jeremy for this invitation. I'm delighted to be part of this 30th anniversary of La Jolla Conference. It's great. And also, I'm very honored of these distinguished panelists. And regarding your question, I may start by saying that Central America has been, in my opinion, successful in incorporating renewable energies into the energy matrices of practically all the countries. When we see data from the regional operator of the regional energy market, the MER, we can see that percentages are significant these days. The lead has been taken by Costa Rica. As we know, Costa Rica has always had very strong commitment towards environmentally friendly policies. But it's closely followed by Panama and Guatemala that have been carrying out successful auction processes in the last few years to incorporate renewable energies into the energy mix. And I would say that on that, in good shape. Now comes the time of introducing technology options such as energy storage, so that renewable energy take or displace, if we want to say, more the thermal and fossil fuel generation. On that regard, I believe that countries are aware of the need of engaging into promoting energy storage and flexibility into the regulations, but we are lagging a bit behind. It's like incipient, I would say. All of the countries have the awareness of the importance of doing it, and they would like to engage into that, but it's so far we haven't seen really not yet clear regulations in place for energy storage investments, for instance. I know that countries are engaged in developing those regulations. Hopefully we will have them soon, and that will, I believe, complement very well the renewable energy development that we've seen lately in the country. It's important because, as we know, energy storage will be not only the needed complement for firm energy, but also there is an applications for grid stability, for grid improvements. So this is to me the next stage that we need to work on. And just to close these initial remarks regarding where we are in the region on the energy transition, I would say that what we are also seeing is that countries are interested in replacing thermal-based generation with natural gas. And since Central America doesn't have natural gas resources, it's been tapped through LNG. And so we'll see in the next following years how renewables can continue to have a strong niche in the region vis-a-vis the LNG development that we're seeing these days in El Salvador, in Nicaragua, and Panama. And as we know, Nicaragua has announced a large new project. El Salvador is already in construction of a new one. And Hondurans and Guatemalans would, I'm sure, will also be interested in installing its LNG projects. This is interesting because just by listening at the colleague from Olade in the prior conversation, Central America has advanced a lot in terms of regional integration, but even so through the CIEPAC project and the MIR. But I would say that there's still some lack of commitment at the national levels to make the regional integration in energy a very the priority, because countries, instead of each and everyone installing different projects, what we see is we don't see the regional integration on that regard yet, but hopefully it will come. And now we'll close these initial remarks here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Silvia. So I want to stay in Central America, Salvador. What is going on in El Salvador? Yes, there's a lot of movement on the solar front. There's been auctions and for solar energy, and we heard about the announcement on the natural gas plant. How does El Salvador plan to navigate the transition, or what is going on with the energy markets in El Salvador? And you can turn your mic on.
Yes, thank you, Cecilia. Good morning, everybody. Regarding to your question, along the past decade, our electrical matrix shifted from a dominated, as you know, imported oil to a one with more than 50% of renewable energy. This was in the last decade. During the last 2 years of the current government, construction of PV power plants, wind farm, and natural gas power plants has been speed up during the last 2 years, even during the pandemic year. We work a lot trying to accelerate the construction of 3 power plants. Nowadays, only 350 megawatt, 55 megawatt of natural gas are going to be ready before March of the next year. We hope so. Yesterday, we met with people, with the investor of this natural gas, and according to the schedule, they said March, but I think it's better to say March or April, but before April or March, we will have finished this power plant in commercial operation. Nevertheless, last trimester, even we don't have still the natural power plant, last trimester, El Salvador generates more than 92% of the renewable energy. Wow. We are approaching to be almost clean. And according to the planning, we have energy planning, over 2025, 2026, maybe, we will have only natural gas and renewable energies. So our energy transition is speed up. Furthermore, El Salvador defined last year a long-term new energy policy. From now to 2050, we should work to become carbon neutral and optimize our national renewable resources. This is our dreams. We have a plenty of solar. In some point, northern, we have some wind resources, enough to install maybe another 150 megawatts. We have geothermal energy, plenty of geothermal energy. So we have, according to our economy, the economy is getting up. I think we will ready with more geothermal, wind, and solar for the following years. Before 2030, we had to install more geothermal. Thus, achieving our NDC commitments, which are more than 46% for the 2005. This policy I mentioned also is a strong alignment with the SDO, in particular with the number 7, affordable and clean energy. We are aligning with all these objectives. Regarding to these objectives, the policy relates legacy framework must be transformed. We have a regulatory framework very old, some law even coming from the 1950. Now we found some regulations start from the 90s. During the transformation of the privatization, and these laws are not very aligned with the technology, with the current technology, with how the world is seeing for the new world. So we had to transform this regulatory framework into a better one. We had to ensure sustainable energy supply. This is another axis of the policy. We had to promote and go deeper into efficiency energy. We had to reduce energy vulnerability by reducing oil dependence. More soft and hard activities we had to include to prevent climate changes or weather events, seismic events, which are very common in our lands. So with this on mind, I think we are moving into the energy transition. We are already changing from heavy metals and oil. Now we are more than 90% of renewable energy. In the following 5 years, we have only natural gas and renewable energies, and then we are going to optimize our national resources. So this is our ideas.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So now I am going to move to the Caribbean. Rafael, you're in Dominican Republic, and you're working in the government at the moment, but you also have a very region perspective. So I wanted to ask you, how does the Caribbean region fit in the green recovery and energy transition?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation, first of all. And I want to say hi to Sylvia, a very good friend of me and the Dominican Republic. Sylvia is kind of Dominican. She lives here a few years ago. So very nice to see you, Sylvia, again. And well, as you mentioned, Cecilia, here in the Dominican Republic, although we are a Caribbean island, we really have a very diversified generation facilities, because nowadays we have probably 36% of our energy comes from natural gas generation. obviously imported, but at least it's a transition fuel, as you probably know. And we also have a lot of, in the last 3 years, maybe due to the low cost that the renewable energy, specifically solar power panels, has been facing. We have an incredible increase in solar power panels project, as well as wind power projects. Just to give you an idea, from a peak of 3,000 megawatts that the country has, we have like 700 on renewable energy nowadays. Obviously, the availability of the renewable energy is not as good as the fuel ones. You know, you have in power, you have like 20% of availability. Maybe in our case, wind is kind of 36-37% availability. And I would say that compared with the rest of the islands in the Caribbean, most of the islands, probably due to their kind of a small market, because it's something that goes with the market, do not have natural gas, which has been, in our case, a driver through the transition energy. We have a regasification natural gas port since 2003. Currently, we are, in fact, started bidding for another one in the north part of the island, and that helps. That has been very helping on this matter. Nowadays, we have pretty much over 1,000 megawatts that are based on natural gas, and there's probably a couple of hundred more in the next 3 or 2 years, at least 200 more. And the rest of the Caribbean, although I think a lot of solar power project has been developed in most of the islands in the rest of the Caribbean, they do not have those base load power plant of transition fuel as natural gas could be. And so it helped. I think it helped. But on the other hand, something that we are trying to help the area is with this bidding that I just mentioned, which is going to be situated in the north part of the island. We are trying to attract big players of the natural gas business. What I mean big players, I mean players that owns their own gas. It could be in the state. Obviously, the state is the more economic source of natural gas for us, although we have been coming imported for Trinidad and Tobago in the last years. But we can serve as a hub for the rest of the island, because probably a couple of those islands, although they have very good purchasing power, level, the population, etc., due to the size of the market, sometimes it's not very economic. There's not so much viability in economically talking in order to build regasification power port. Sorry. So we believe that here in the DR we can serve as a hub in order to those islands can install natural gas facilities, power generation facilities, and we can serve not as a country. Obviously, the private sector could serve as a natural gas hub serving by chips, obviously. Talking about our own market, we are, as well as Salvador Handal mentioned in El Salvador, we are now reviewing our regulation. We have a renewable energy law that was sized back in 2007. So now we are in our way to renew, to check, to basically adjust the regulation, the current regulation, that for the energy storage, we already have 20 megawatts on energy storage, battery energy storage in the DR. And we also have the electric cars. So we are now adjusting our regulation in order to in a certain way, rules those markets that already exist here in the DR. Just to give an idea, another transition, I would say a transition stage that really helped is the net metering. We already have pretty much 230 megawatts on net metering, households net metering. So it has been very, very helpful for most of the final users on this matter. But I would say, in order to allow my partners to participate also, that the more important thing that we are doing now is uh, allow the private sector to invest and serve as a guarantee, as a government, to set the rules that guarantee those investments in the energy market. In fact, the current government are not planning to invest any dollars on generation. We are more rely on the private sector to do it. We obviously have to do something with the interconnection lines. This is a kind of bottle of neck that we have now, but we are in our way to make some public-private associations, companies, in order to help and to develop those lines that we really need now for the grid, in order to be a more fluent grid. So thank you for letting me participate, and I'm open to questions later on during the conference.
Great, thank you. It's clear that Dominican Republic is taking seriously the green recovery by allowing private participation, investments, and of course, with all new technologies and investments come jobs. So excellent. Kevin, now on to you. Rafael was talking about the Caribbean and their need for natural gas, and you're the gas expert in our panel. So what is the role that the natural gas is playing right now in the transition? Yeah, your microphone is off.
Good morning, everybody. It's still morning in most of the Americas. So this is my third La Jolla conference. First one being in 2019 when I was physically in San Diego and physically in Torrey Pines. It'll be good to be back there next year, physically. I'll talk briefly about 3 countries in the English-speaking Caribbean. The first is Trinidad and Tobago. Then we look at Jamaica, and then we look at Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, sorry. To begin with Trinidad and Tobago, where I live and where I served as minister, Trinidad generates all its electricity from natural gas. And that has been the case for probably the last 30 years. So Trinidad is already getting all its 1,300 odd megawatts from natural gas. There is intention to move now from natural gas to solar and to hydrogen. So to that end, BP and Shell are preparing to start the country's first solar farm, which will generate about 110 megawatts of installed capacity, which is about 10% of the country's, about 9% of the country's peak demand. And then there is a hydrogen initiative by a private company called NewGen, which is very innovative in that they will be taking the waste heat from one of the simple cycle power plants in Trinidad and using that waste heat to generate electricity, which would then be used to electrolyze water to generate hydrogen. And that hydrogen would be used to make ammonia. So that's green ammonia, eliminating the need for methane to be used in the manufacture of ammonia. So we are going straight to the hydrogen step in the Haber process. So that's in Trinidad in terms of what's happening. So in Jamaica, which I find to be a fascinating case study, Jamaica has no production of natural gas. Jamaica has no production of oil. And Jamaica's economy has for a very long time been held to ransom by the need to import crude oil, which they would refine at the Petrojam refinery to make fuel oil, which would then be used for power generation. And that caused the Jamaican economy to be very vulnerable to the price of crude oil on the world market. What Jamaica has done, I would say, in the last 5 or 6 years is remarkable in that 27% of Jamaica's installed capacity is now natural gas. And where is that natural gas coming from? Well, it's coming in the form of LNG from the United States. There's a company called New Fortress, which has 2 regasification plants in Jamaica, supplying 3 power plants. So Jamaica has an installed capacity based on natural gas of 404 megawatts. And I find that to be a huge achievement for a country like Jamaica. Jamaica is also diversified into wind and solar and so on. So Jamaica has probably one of the more diversified energy diets in the English-speaking Caribbean. And then I'll come lastly to Guyana. Guyana is probably the biggest news story in the world of oil and gas for the last 2 or 3 years. Everybody knows that they've discovered 9 billion barrels of oil equivalent. In that 9 billion barrels of oil equivalent, there is going to be a not insignificant amount of associated natural gas. So Exxon estimates that they could deliver 50 million cubic feet of natural gas per day to the Guyanese coastline by 2024, which would be enough for a 200 megawatt combined cycle power plant. Now, that might seem small for larger countries like the Dominican Republic and the United States and so on, but Guyana's biggest problem, if you were to go around Guyana and speak to businessmen and ask them what's the number one obstacle to doing business in Guyana, it is the reliability and the cost of electricity. So just to give you an example, in Guyana, electricity is 26 US cents per kilowatt hour for residential customers. In Trinidad, that's anywhere between 4 to 6 US cents per kilowatt hour for residential. So it gives you an idea of the vast disparity. And that, of course, has implications for the cost of doing business and lifestyle. So the plan is Guyana is pushing very hard, and the government has put their full support behind a gas to power project that would see Exxon delivering natural gas to the shoreline of Guyana by 2024 to supply a 200 megawatt power plant combined cycle. And it is also going to give a not insignificant amount of natural gas liquids, of which propane is the most important. So Guyana is going to become self-sufficient in cooking gas, and they would, of course, also be an exporter of propane or cooking gas. So that's what's happening with gas to power. The current government of Guyana has also resuscitated a hydroelectric project called the Amalia Falls project. Guyana, of course, being one of, in terms of its hydroelectric capacity, it was estimated that Guyana has close to 9,000 megawatts of potential hydroelectric capacity. So the government is going after gas to power and it's going after hydroelectric with the aim of phasing out the fuel oil, which of course, again, is carbon intensive and expensive, and with the aim of reducing the cost of electricity to the Guyanese public, and bringing it down somewhere to the low end of where Trinidad pays for electricity. So that's largely what's happening. I'm pretty excited about the hydrogen project in Trinidad. And we currently have a natural gas shortage in Trinidad. As some of you all may know, it's been in the news for the last 10 years. Trinidad's been struggling to supply its ammonia plants with natural gas. So therefore, hydrogen from water, using what is a waste stream of energy from a power plant, is really an attractive option for displacing methane. So we're really creating hydrogen from what would be a waste stream of electricity from a power plant, and it's going to help should that project be realized. So that's what's happening. I mean, if we had more time, we could talk about geothermal in the Eastern Caribbean. The Eastern Caribbean, as you all may know, is volcanic. That's pretty obvious. We just had a major volcanic eruption in St. Vincent. But geothermal is also has a lot of potential in the Eastern Caribbean, in St. Vincent and Grenadines and Dominica and so on. So thanks very much, and we'll take some comments later on.
Thank you so much. And you were talking about geothermal and hydrogen. So that takes me back to Salvador. I saw you maybe a couple of weeks ago on a panel. You were talking about geothermal. Geothermal is something that nobody talks about. Everybody talks about solar, wind, but geothermal has been around for a long time in Central America and the Caribbean. There's a great opportunity. And also about hydrogen, how is El Salvador utilizing that resource that can be firm power, against the intermittency of solar and wind, meaning geothermal? And have you thought about hydrogen in El Salvador?
Well, there are many ideas about hydrogen, green hydrogen. Let's say we have already a route map for this hydrogen as a vector, energy vector. We are already planning with different organizations in the government to contribute to develop this for storage. And in the regulation, we had to include in one of the law, we had to include this energy vector. So what we have in mind is hydrogen. Generation of hydrogen consumes a lot of energy. Our electrical demand is a little bit getting the one we had before the pandemic started. So we hope the demand will increase maybe 1.5 or 2%. So it will be not too high. So we already have extra power to supply energy for our industrial and general demand. So the idea is to transform some equipment in the industrial area to use hydrogen, or even in transportation in the further future. But to produce hydrogen, we had to use the less amount of energy to produce a certain amount of megawatts or tons of hydrogen. So we think that the best way to reduce the electricity consumer in the hydrogen electrolyzers can be using geothermal. We have plenty of geothermal along our volcanic chains, which is very close to the ocean, where we have one international port. And in the near future, we will have another port in the eastern part, close to the Gulf of Fonseca, and close to Nicaragua's and Honduras borders. So there will be another port. In this case, we want to develop the geothermal on that area to connect directly to electrolyzers, power plants to generate green hydrogen, and then maybe we can export to regional or even Europe. So that is our idea about nitrogen, but using geothermal or maybe solar concentrator. We have some ideas. We experiment with solar concentrator in the last decade. I think combining with geothermal. So the cheaper one will be the combination of these natural resources. We have a plenty. So using just only the electrical manner to generate or to separate the hydrogen from the oxygen, I think will be not so cheaper. So we have to be competitive if we use natural resources as cheaper we can't. We have that, but I know that Guatemala, Nicaragua, Panama, even as Kevin said, all the Caribbean arc, volcanic arc, has a lot of energy. And this is one example. So they can use geothermal. And we are lucky because we started geothermal in the 70s. And now we are almost we have about 200 something on installing capacity on geothermal, and we are promoting another two power plants in the eastern, which will be about 50 or 70 megawatt more. And we have a training for Latin American here, which is a geothermal, which is a combination with the Icelanders and United Nations. So when we have people to get training on geothermal, you can send them to El Salvador, or maybe this year I think will be by this kind of technology we have because of the pandemic. But we are ready to contribute to the regional, all the countries, friendly countries, to promote geothermal. So go ahead with the hydrogen. Regionally, I think we will better if we promote regionally the hydrogen to export to Europe also or other countries. That's our ideas about the hydrogen.
Excellent. Sylvia, do you see like there's going to be a regional collaboration, cooperation, maybe standards for hydrogen, because of other countries? Each country in Central America is small. Even Costa Rica, who's gotten a lot of attention for hydrogen, is a very small market. So how do we make it more robust to compete, against Southern Cone?
Thanks, Ceci. I would like to rebuild a little bit on what Salvador was recently discussing. And I think there is a step before in terms of developing more generation anywhere you do it when you open the markets. And it's odd to remember that Central American markets, most of them right now are open markets. And in those kind of environments, the economic signals are the ones that really drive new investments. On top of energy policies, which are very important in the long term, I'm truly convinced that economic signals need to be present in open markets for investments to happen. I mean, as someone was just discussing, I think it was Rafael, governments, because of the supply deficits and crisis in the 90s, governments decided to pursue the regulatory model where private investment is the driver. Private investors look for pricing and for investment conditions. Is not, and that's important. I think it is interesting to say that, because one of the reasons, in my opinion, you don't see more geothermal development these days in Central America is because as Salvador said, in the 70s and 80s, those investments were done by the governments. And geothermal is a high-risk development energy source. And so when you jump into a new regulatory model, you also need to provide the economic signals and the incentives to investors for any source of energy to go forward. So I think that is true for geothermal, for hydrogen, for anything. And I think it is important to put that in context, because what we are seeing in Central America is that is an oversupply of generation. So and very low prices of generation. And when you have that kind of framework, or not framework, but environment, the challenge is, how do you provide the economic signals for private investors to come and continue with the path of the growth? So I believe there is the achieving again a balance between supply and demand, and that, accompanied with energy policies, will, I'm sure, provide the right setting for development of all these new technologies. But first, you have to have the demand. I think we are now these days in the phase of the markets where the user is the benefit, because prices are very low. There is abundance of energy. So it's time, for instance, in what I see in some of the countries, distribution companies, to jump into another of your questions, distribution companies are one of the stakeholders more interested in promoting electrical. Why? Because they're basically overstocked with energy, and they need more demand. They need to foster more electrical demand so that dynamics of more investment continues to come. Otherwise, what you will see, in my opinion, is some pilot projects, some very good intentions on energy policy. But you really need private investors to have the conditions to do those investments. Otherwise, they won't fly. And I think it's the right time for governments to think about this, to issue the right regulations that promote that kind of investments, and the legal certainty, which is another important factor for private investments to come. And then everything else will, as we see, comes to fruition. But first, there is this, right now in Central America, as I mentioned earlier, we're seeing that every country is installing generation. And for instance, in of the generation of what the peak demand is, and prices are totally depressed. So in an environment like that, I mean, and the government is not the investor any longer. So you first need to achieve again a balance between supply and demand, and issue economic signals that will invite the private investors to come back and develop all these alternatives. And I think that it's the right time for the consumer, because it's I mean, prices, if you see the electricity rates in Central America are coming down. As one of the panelists was saying, is you see these huge differences between countries that have not have the benefit of private investment, very large investments. But in our case, I think we are there. We need to continue to have the long-term vision. The government is that is the role of the government, but the rest will come from private sector, because the regulatory model that we adopted was open markets, and in that kind, and another thing I wanted to mention, which is good in the case of Central America, the regulatory scheme is based on short-term marginal cost, which privileges the dispatch of renewable energy and the sources of energy based on their variable cost. So renewables are are totally well positioned to succeed in that kind of model, such as geothermal, hydropower, solar, wind, whatever. I mean, the rules are there. The problem right now, in my opinion, it's not a problem. It's just a condition. It needs to, the dynamic of the market needs to come back a little bit by the economic signals, so that all of these new options can come to fruition.
Yes, well said. So talking about that, Rafael was mentioning earlier the private-public partnerships and so on. So Rafael, could you tell us what's working, and what advice would you give Central America to, encourage these partnerships? And if you can also talk about like how Dominican Republic is accelerating the pace of the electric vehicle markets.
Okay, sorry, I was mute. Well, we have some experience. I mean, it's kind of interesting, but 20 years ago, when we kind of privatized the electrical market, what we really privatized was the generation market, because the distributors company were operated by private partnership, but the property relies on the government at that moment. But on the generation side of the market, I will say that the model works. And what happened was the two larger generations companies were a public-private association enterprise. So since that time, although it wasn't on purpose, I mean, what I mean is the government at that time didn't do it just because they believe on the what we call APP in Spanish, which in English is public-private association. But they did it, and the results have been very good ones, because those two companies specifically, which still are the largest generation companies in the market, has every year make money. Every year the government receive their part of the earnings from that companies. So having said that, now we create an institute that will allow, not only in the energy market, we are also doing it in the construction market for roads and etc. And that new institution is the one who have the commitment to lead those associations and have the rules for it. So we are opening to that. For example, the transmission lines in the DR belong to the government due to the law, but that government companies, that government and that they say that utilities, that government utilities are open, since they don't have the money to do all the lines that the market need. You know, they really are open to permit like private investors do the project under certain rules, and they have like a business plan. They get paid in certain years. Obviously, the transmission lines rely on the government property, but the private investors are going to recover their money, their investments in 7, 10, 11 years. It will depend the fee that lines will charge to the ones who use the lines. So we have a project. In fact, the country needs pretty much $400 million in order to update our transmission lines. We are expecting to do that in the next 2 or 3 years. We already identified the 14 more important projects that will be the key of the success for the new generation that comes to the market. Something that I want to point out, because when Silvia mentioned it, I remember about it. In our case, we are in our energy transition. More than that the government do something for that is because we are full of thermal power based load project. So now in the next 20 months probably, or maybe more, 25 months, no one gonna invest in thermal energy, because we have now, just to give you an idea, 700 megawatts brand new from 1 year ago on coal, although it's not too much related with transition, but we already have it. But we also have 704 new megawatts on natural gas. I mean, converted. Used to be fuel, now they are natural gas, due to a couple of natural gas pipeline that we have back in 2020. So in 2 years, pretty much the electrical market has changed a lot on the generation side. So now the only way to expand the generations is through renewable energy, because something that already was mentioned here, they have a preference in order to be dispatched according to our law, and many laws throughout Latin America has the same issue, that they are dispatched as soon as they are available. And if you compare that with variable costs, renewable energy are the one who really have zero variable cost. I mean, you don't have any price for the sun, there are no price for the wind. So they are not variable costs for them. Although obviously they are not available when you want it. So both that combination makes that the new investors are looking for renewable energy projects for two things. First, they are dispatch at guarantee. They don't have to fight against or compete against other thermal generation. I mean, it could be fuel, it could be natural gas, etc. It could be even water, although we don't have too much water. Unfortunately, only 6% of our generation relied on hydropower in water. So that's why probably we are going to face probably 6 or 7 more hundred megawatt more on renewable energy in the last 2 years, because it's the only way that the generation market going to increase their size. We are so full cover on thermal generation, base load thermal generation, that we need probably a couple of more years in order to be profitable to make it, to invest in thermal generation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We are running out of time a little bit, but I wanted to ask Kevin, you have a few questions from the audience, so I'm going to ask them. We'll see how many we get through, but so one is, it says from John Frederick. Kevin, okay. In Guinea, is the associated gas coming from oil extraction already suitable for GT in CCPP, or does it need further gas treatment? Your microphone.
So the gas is associated gas, which means that, it's associated with oil production. It would need processing when it makes landfall. So there would have to be a gas processing facility built on shore in Guyana to process that gas, to strip out the liquids and to send the methane to the power plant. So yes, so it's not already suitable for combined cycle power plants. It has to be treated. That's the answer to Johan's question.
Okay, so he followed up and he said, so what would be the expected gas price after treatment for the planned 200 megawatt CCPP, assuming with sum of total GT units?
That I do not know.
Very specific questions.
Yeah, I have an idea of what it would be, but it would be. I wouldn't want to reveal that right now, but it is being worked on by the Guyanese government. But I really don't know. I have some idea, but I wouldn't want to preempt those people in Guyana who are planning this project.
Okay, so and the last question for you here is that's from me. With the race to decarbonize, the 2050 goals and other goals that countries have, etc. Are you active with carbon sequestration for natural gas? In the Caribbean,
there is
the oil producing,
yeah. So to my knowledge, there's no carbon sequestration project in Trinidad. There has been talk about using carbon dioxide to increase oil production, which is a form of sequestration. I think I should mention that Guyana is probably I think it's the second most forested country in the world, after one of the Central African countries. In terms of the landmass covered by jungle and forest, it's vast. So Guyana is a natural carbon sink. And the government of Guyana this current government of Guyana, when they were in government in a previous incarnation, had entered into a agreement with Norway, where the Norwegian government pays them annually to maintain their forests. So although Guyana is now an oil-producing nation and it's producing natural gas and there's a bit of flaring taking place, it remains a net carbon sink. So I think that is the only thing I could think about in terms of sequestration. And then, of course, in Trinidad, they're looking at using carbon dioxide flood to enhance oil production. All right.
Okay, thank you so much. Salvador, I have a question for you on electric mobility, and we don't have time. So if you can give me a year. So everybody wants to decarbonize transportation. And even like the technology is going down, it's going to take some time, but we will need rules and regulations to make it affordable for people to bring in electric vehicles, let's say, and then for hydrogen. Is electric transportation or zero emission transportation part of your goals that you're actively working on? And by what year do you foresee El Salvador having zero carbon in transport? Just a guess.
That is very difficult to respond. I mean, the year when we have on that time. But according to our plan, I mentioned before, we are writing the policy. We receive a policy last year, but we made some observations to this policy, and we are looking into a better law that somebody present last year to the government, to the assembly. So now we are working on another thing is that having a clean, completely clean electrical market, I think in our latitudes are very difficult. I think because we have already some matrix, some oil on the matrix, electrical matrix, and I think that even when we have a lot of natural gas, even we are less contamination, but we are less polluting, but even it will have some emissions. So to have a clean electrical transport, clean, I think is very difficult. It still will be a dream, but we can push on. I think connecting electrical cars to the matrix, we don't know what kind of electrons are getting in the car. If we connect directly to the electrical chargers to the power, for example, geothermal power plant or solar power plant, we will sure that it will be clean. But because of the grid, we don't know how from where coming the electron. So we had to work to have electrical cars, and El Salvador are coming. Many people are entering electrical cars, even are expensive. But I think in the 5 years later, we will have maybe 5% of our current transportation systems, or private or public. Maybe we'll have according to our planning, we will have 5% in the 2030, I guess.
Okay. Hopefully sooner.
I hope, but
yes.
There are few of them, but
yes.
People they came into the El Salvador, but they had to charge. We don't have charger a lot. There are some of them around. Maybe the electrical distributions company they have for last Sylvia said a pilot project, and they charge there. Another company is importing some cars. Some persons bring all on their own cars. So it's like every fashion. Somebody can buy, so they can.
Yes.
But according to our law, according to our regulations, maybe next year we will have finish our regulations. We have to discuss public discussion. We have to present to our people what they have in mind about. Of course, we are working with the private, avoiding this kind of investment because it's the strong money we have over there. Even there are many foreigners coming here every month to how to invest in geothermal, how to invest in wind, how to invest in natural gas. So we are open to this kind of investment, but we expect responsible companies come here in order to follow our rules. For example, we have some poverties in the countryside. We have to electric these areas. Even the agriculture, we have a lot of dependence. So we have to use the geothermal. We have to use the solar heat to contribute with irrigation system, with let's say agriculture systems like greenhouses systems, and we can combine a PV plant with agriculture and another
Oh yeah.
matters to get care of our land, and we can in agriculture products, but we can generate electricity. So this kind of things we expect from the investors. There are many of them are very responsible. In the past, they didn't. So now we expect they Americans coming here. They are very strong company with very good feeling of what is going here from Europe. So we are expecting to have a very good contribution from the investor in the short time.
Excellent. Sylvia, we ran out of time. However, there was a question here that if you can answer with good, bad, so. Okay, that's the answer that I expect from you. So here it goes. What are the perspectives of MER transactions with the increase of generation projects along Central America? Your mic is off.
Yes. I think
good, bad, or so.
I would say so these days. I have to be honest with that.
Well, let's ponder on that. Okay, so Rafael, one for you. Just give me the year. By what year do you perceive Dominican Republic to have zero carbon transportation? Just a year. Come up with something. Whatever comes to your mind.
I would think 2030.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You're the case study to follow.
Yeah. I mean, because we have 3,000 electric cars nowadays, but most of them are private cars. So we don't have public transportation on board yet. But 2030, to be honest. Thank you.
Excellent. So, Kevin, the last question for you. By when will the Caribbean, by what year do you see the Caribbean being carbon neutral? Just a year. Your mic.
Give an honest late 2030s, between 2035 and 2040.
All right.
There's still a lot of work to be done on the legislative side and targets that need to be met and so on.
Well, Thank you, everybody. This was an amazing panel. I think I'm going to re-listen to the discussions because it was a lot to take in. And we really, truly appreciate everything you've contributed to. And have a wonderful day. And thank you to the audience. And thank you for the questions. I couldn't get to every one of them, but it certainly was informative. And I hope to see you all in La Jolla next year. Thank you again.